again for having me. All right, so I'm going to talk today about OpenBazaar. The title of my talk is Decentralized Money Needs Decentralized Markets. So first, why do we care about cryptocurrencies? Well, there are a few potential answers out there. And everyone has different reasons, but I think most people fall into sort of these different categories. One is they make us rich, right? That's the self-interested category. I totally understand that. If someone's telling you they're interested in cryptocurrency, but they aren't interested in making any money, maybe you should be a little skeptical of that. Whether or not that's their original goal of getting in, may not be, but certainly it's a very attractive part of the proposal. The second potential answer is it's amazing technology. It's just interesting to look at and work on. That's the technical bucket. And I know there's a lot of people with a computer science background who are interested in cryptocurrencies because of that. A third is that they're better than the existing alternatives. So this is the practical bucket. This is people who use cryptocurrencies because they're faster or cheaper or whatever practical benefits they get from using them. That's their main purpose for doing so. A fourth is that they challenge the existing system. This is the revolutionary category. People who want to stick it to the man, people who don't like the banks, who don't like big organizations. They view this technology as revolutionary. I agree with them. And that's why they're using cryptocurrencies. And the last is just ideological in nature. People who view Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies as empowering individuals, as giving them tools that are necessary just for human freedom. And I certainly know a lot of people who got involved originally, have that interest, and I personally have that interest as well. So when you look at existing alternatives, other payment systems like PayPal and credit cards, and you go through these things, they can't really compare to cryptocurrencies, right? They don't make us rich. They're not really amazing tech. They're just kind of a ledger that's controlled by a company that can be changed at will. They are the existing alternatives, so they're certainly not better. They don't challenge the existing system, and they don't really empower individuals either. So you have to ask, what is it about cryptocurrencies that makes them fit all these different categories? How is that possible? And the answer is because of the way they're built, which is they're built to be trustless, right? Bitcoin was powerful because it was the first way to engage, to exchange online value with people without needing to trust another party. Okay, well, how is that accomplished? I'm not going to go into the technical details of Bitcoin, but one of the most important properties it has is decentralization. So what is decentralization? Well, an easy way to think about it is to know what the opposite is, which is centralization, right? And that seems pretty obvious just based on its name. It means has a central point of failure. It means a system that has a central point of control, right? And so this can be one person, one organization, a company, a government, someone that is able to exert control over the platform or the service and make changes themselves unilaterally. And it also means a literal dependence on physical architecture. So a centralized system has, let's say, a room full of servers somewhere that everyone connects into. And if that connection, if those servers go down or that service is unavailable, then the website, the service just is not available, right? That's not decentralized, that's centralized. So there are some examples of centralized systems now. Unfortunately, most of the big platforms on the internet today are centralized systems. Social media platforms are fully centralized. So Facebook and Twitter and all of the big ones that are popular have a company that runs the platform, and they are a central point of control and failure. Payment platforms, right? I already mentioned PayPal and credit cards, centralized systems. Online marketplaces are as well. The eBays, Amazon, Etsy's of the world, they are controlled by a company. Well, so what, right? If that's the way most of these platforms work, then what's the problem, right? clearly they're providing value to people. Well, that's true, they are, but there are some problems with centralized systems. And the biggest one, in my mind, is that they are permissioned. The systems need permission from the controller of the platform to use them. And that means, of course, that they can refuse permission, right? They are the ultimate gatekeeper into the network. Now, whether or not, let's say they allow you to access the system, another problem with the systems are that they're censored for their own interests. So they will prevent things from happening on their platforms based on their own interests as a company or on behalf of governments who force them to do these things based on their laws. So for social media platforms, people just have their free expression censored. Payment platforms, of course, payments themselves are reversed all the time. Online marketplaces are censored if the trade's not allowed. So we see that all the time. Another problem is that they're monitored fully. The platform owner gets all of the data of everyone involved, right? Everything that happens on the platform, they know everything about it, and they use that data. Either they sell it, or they just extract value themselves, or perhaps hand it over to governments if asked. And another issue with decentralized systems is the cost, right? So you have middlemen that are able to extract payment from people in order to use those platforms, because they're the gatekeepers, right? They get to say if you use it or not. And if you don't pay them, or if you don't give up your data to them, then they're not going to let you have access. So decentralization is the opposite of what I just talked about, right? There is no central point of failure or control. There's not one server room or warehouses full of servers somewhere that if they go down, no one else can use the network. It's a network where people connect directly to each other, and there's no reliance on this central architecture. And there's no one person or organization, there's no company or government that owns the platform and can stop people from using it. And that has a lot of benefits to it. And these are, of course, the opposite of the drawbacks of centralization. So it is decentralized platforms are permissionless, right? You don't need to ask anyone's permission to do it. You can just join the network, and you can't be booted off either. They're censorship resistant. No one exerts control over all the entire platform. So if you try to do something, if you try to send a payment, if you try to engage in trade, if you try to post something on these platforms that are decentralized, no one else is going to be able to go in there and just pull it down. The data isn't owned solely by the platform owner, because there is no platform owner, right? Everyone running the software is a part of this decentralized network. So it's much more private. You're not forced to give up your identifying information in order to join the network. And then, of course, there are no middlemen to extract payments, right? There is no one that's sort of, you have to pay a toll to use. There's no one to do that, right? Because it's permissionless. So let's plug those benefits back into cryptocurrencies that we talked about earlier. Because cryptocurrencies are decentralized, they are permissionless money. You can send money to anyone in the world, anywhere, and no one can stop you. And once that money's sent, no one can go back and say, erase that transaction because we don't like it, right? It's censorship resistant. No one controls that. In cryptocurrencies, no one controls that ledger, right? It's maintained by everyone contributing to the network. Because they're decentralized, they're more private. There are no accounts that you have to sign up for, right? There's no know your customer laws to use the core software itself. Now, people who build on top centralized platforms like exchanges, they may reintroduce some of these things, but the core network and protocol and software itself doesn't have these problems. And then there's no minimum to extract payments. Now, it might cost you something to use the system. For example, in Bitcoin, you have miners' fees, but that's different than someone being a gatekeeper to give you access to the network itself. So to summarize, because cryptocurrencies are decentralized, you can send money to anyone in the world without needing permission, without your payment being reversed, without revealing your identity, and at low cost. That is why they are so powerful. Or at least that's why they can be powerful. But there is a problem. What are currencies used for? There's really primarily two reasons to use a currency. One is to store value. The second is to buy things. right? That's actually what currencies are for, buying stuff. So cryptocurrencies give you all these benefits of decentralization for payments, but payments aren't the only place that we face problems of centralized platforms. The marketplaces where we buy and sell things online are centralized. And as soon as you use your decentralized money on a centralized platform, you lose all of those benefits of decentralization that I just talked about. So let me give you an example of this. Let's say tomorrow, Amazon started to accept Bitcoin. Okay, so do we still have all those benefits of decentralized money that I talked about a minute ago? Is it permissionless? Well, no, it's not, because Amazon controls who can buy and sell on their platform completely. Is it censorship resistant? Well, no. Amazon has 32 different categories of goods and services that are banned on their platform, right? They will censor your trade. They do it all the time. Is it private? Well, no. Amazon requires identifying information to be on their platform, and it captures the data of what you're doing completely the entire time. Is it low cost? No. Amazon charges a fee. Typically, they charge, like, I think the average is 15%, but they certainly charge more than that for certain categories of goods. So the benefits that you derive, the main point of using cryptocurrencies, is significantly diminished or even completely eliminated if you only use them on centralized platforms. So if only there were a decentralized platform for trade that used decentralized money, then the benefits of decentralization for the money could be fully realized. And it's probably no surprise that I'm talking about OpenBazaar. That is what OpenBazaar is. It's a decentralized platform for trade that uses cryptocurrencies. So let me talk specifically about what OpenBazaar is. It's actually 4 different things all rolled up into one. So it is a protocol first. Protocol is basically a way for computers to talk to each other. And the purpose of the protocol is to allow people to engage in trade directly with each other without needing to go through a middleman and settling in cryptocurrency. The second thing OpenBazaar is a piece of software. There's a piece of software that implements this protocol. It's actually 2 pieces of software right now, both a back end and a front end together. All of the software in OpenBazaar is open source and completely free to use, and always has been and always will be. The third thing OpenBazaar is a network, right? So it is a collection of computers that are all running this software and then creating this peer-to-peer network of people who are communicating, connecting directly to each other in order to engage in trade. And the last thing OpenBazaar is the community, right? So there are people behind those computers running the software, and their motivation is to be able to join this network of people engaging in trade directly with each other. But why are they doing it? Well, the benefits, again, go back to decentralization benefits, generally speaking. So the benefits of using OpenBazaar are that it has no fees. There's no middleman in the system at all. The trade is directly between the people involved in buying or selling goods or services with each other. So there's no one to take out that 15% cut or whatnot. Now, there are fees for the underlying cryptocurrency itself, right? So if you're using Bitcoin, you have to pay a Bitcoin miner's fee. So it's not as though there are no fees, but the platform itself for trade has no cost associated with it. There is no censorship on OpenBazaar. Again, you're not asking permission from anyone to use this. You're connecting directly to someone else and trading with them. So there's no one to stop you. It's more private than other platforms. There's no account to sign up for. There's no identifying information you're forced to put in there. The way OpenBazaar works is you go to openbazaar.org, which I suggest everyone do right now, and click the download link. it downloads an installer to your local computer, and then you run it, and it connects you directly to other people. It's also more private because optionally, if people want, they can use something like Tor to give them more anonymity, although that's not by default and it's not required to use. It's also easier to use than other platforms. Getting your OpenBazaar store running takes literally minutes. I'm not exaggerating. Give it a try right now. It's very simple to download, install, run, and set your store up. Much easier than other platforms. And of course, lastly, it uses cryptocurrencies, and it gains all of those benefits that we talked about earlier from doing so. You can't use anything other than cryptocurrencies on the platform. So I want to take a minute to show you what the platform looks like. Going to share my screen now. Give me a moment. Okay. So you're now looking at the OpenBazaar client. This is my page. So I actually am I'm a vendor on the OpenBazaar network. I sell voiceover recording services. If anyone's interested, pay me in Bitcoin. So this is what my store looks like. I only have one listing here, but if I click on it, it shows that it can have variants. So you can change things like the length or the turnaround time if you need a rush order. I give you all the details of the order here, and pictures, their reviews, that kind of thing. So in this sense, it's pretty much like other e-commerce platforms from the seller's perspective. And if I click on Discover here, it shows you the listings that are available on the network. So there are different search providers that offer different views into the network. Right now, I have 3 that are plugged in. OB1, which is the company that I'm a co-founder of, and we offer search directly in the client. And then there are a couple others as well. And you can go ahead and search anything you want, find whatever you want on the network. Right now, there are 3 different currencies that are accepted: Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash, and Zcash. You can filter them based on ratings, based on moderation, whether or not it's adult content, the type of goods. There's all kinds of different filters, and different search providers have different filters. I'm going to show you the process of buying something. First, let me show you the wallet. If you click on wallet here, it's going to show you how much money you have, what the value is, your transaction history. You can receive money, of course, to fund your wallet to be able to pay for things. You can also fund via Shapeshift, so you don't have to send Bitcoin in. I mean, it will be Bitcoin that comes in, but you can send any currency you want to fund it there. So I'm going to show you what it looks like to purchase something. So I'm looking for a Bitcoin pen. Here's this listing. I really like these pens. Free the market, free the world. It's a great slogan. You can see we have a verified moderator on this purchase. This means that the company OB1 has said the moderator that is the escrow provider for this is someone we trust. So it helps give a little more trust into the network, but you don't have to use those. When you click buy, it's going to give you different shipping options. It's going to give you different moderators you can use. In this case, I'm just going to send a direct payment and not use the multi-sig escrow because I trust the vendor. I don't need to do that. However, for larger orders or for orders where you don't necessarily trust the vendor, you should definitely choose a moderator, which makes it a 2 of 3 multi-sig escrow. And ideally, you choose a verified moderator because they are more trustworthy, but that's your decision. It's going to tell you the total, shipping, and everything. Click pay. Yes. And then it's going to bring you to this screen, which I'm sure if you've used Bitcoin or any cryptocurrency to pay for things you're familiar with, it gives you a QR code. And if I have a smartphone wallet, I want to pay, I can scan the QR code. But the really neat thing about OpenBazaar is it actually has a built-in wallet that you can fund. And then all you need to do to pay for one of these orders is click pay from wallet. It's going to tell you what the fee is going to be. Yes, pay, and that's it. Your payment is already sent. So that's what it looks like to purchase something on OpenBazaar. And, right now, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, 55, 56, 57, 58, 59, 60, 61, 62, 63, 64, 65, 66, 67, 68, 69, 70, 71, 72, 73, 74, 75, 76, 77, 78, 79, 80, 81, 82, 83, 84, 85, 86, 87, 88, 89, 90, 91, 92, 93, 94, 95, 96, 97, 98, 99, 100, 101, 102, 103, 104, 105, 106, 107, 108, 109, 110, 111, 112, 113, 114, 115, 116, 117, 118, 119, something like 7,000 listings in Bitcoin. And then there are more in Bitcoin Cash and Zcash. And these are listings that don't have adult content. So the actual number is higher, but I'm choosing not to not to display potential adult content on the live stream. Okay. So that's what OpenBazaar looks like. I highly encourage you all to go check it out yourself. I'm going to talk briefly about the history of OpenBazaar before I talk about where we're going in the near future. So this actually started as a hackathon entry in Toronto back in April 2014. There's a famous guy in the Bitcoin world called Amir Taki. He created something called Dark Market, which was intended to be a distributed, decentralized marketplace online using cryptocurrency. But the focus was on sort of a dark web kind of stuff. They did win the hackathon, but they decided not to continue development. And then Brian Hoffman forked their code, reached out to him, asked what they were going to do. They said, we're not going to continue it. So he forked the code. And then he changed the name and the focus because the focus is not anymore on the dark web stuff. It's basically saying, we think that because of all the benefits I laid out of decentralization, decentralized trade platform is important to have in the world for anyone, for everyone, for anything. And so it then became OpenBazaar, and now the goal is for anyone to use this decentralized marketplace for any type of trade. I joined shortly thereafter, and we worked on this along with another contributor, Washington Sanchez, for nearly a year as a side project together. And what we found is there was a lot of interest in the community. I think people recognize that, again, decentralized money needs a decentralized marketplace for it to be, for its benefits to be fully realized. And so we got a lot of support from the community. And eventually we formed a company called OB1. I'm a co-founder of that company. And it's really hard to build decentralized systems, right? So we wanted the best talent we could possibly get. And to do that, we formed a company. The protocol, of course, is still open and not monetized, but the company OB1 offers services on top of the network to monetize. We released the first version of OpenBazaar in April of 2016. That first version was limited to people being online. People's stores had to be online all the time in order to access the network because it's a fully distributed, distributed system. And of course, that's not a great user experience. And so we worked really hard to release the second version of OpenBazaar, which we did last November. And that's built on IPFS. IPFS is a distributed file system. I encourage anyone who's interested in decentralization and this type of stuff generally to look into IPFS. But what it allows for OpenBazaar is that stores can go on and offline. They don't have to keep their store online for people to engage in trade. So it's a much better user experience. And of course, there's all kinds of new features and the user interface is much better. And the second version is a substantially better product. And we're really proud of it. And that's what you're using now if you use OpenBazaar. OpenBazaar was Bitcoin only until the beginning of this year. And we've always been big believers in Bitcoin. And we did integrate Bitcoin Cash and Zcash at the beginning of this year for a couple of reasons. And I have a whole video touching on this if you go look at the OpenBazaar YouTube account. Basically, there's a lot of people in the cryptocurrency space, and Bitcoin's not the only game in town anymore. And those people wanted more options. So we wanted to give them more options. But also, right after we released 2.0 and sort of early winter last year, Bitcoin fees went kind of through the roof, $5, $10, $20, up to $50. And when you're talking about a marketplace where people are buying and selling stuff directly with each other, a $20 fee per transaction is just not really viable. So we wanted to include other cryptocurrency options that didn't cost as much. And now we have Bitcoin Cash and Zcash, and there are other integrations coming as well. I'd like to give you a sense of the statistics around the network, just as an interesting, here's how it's going. It's kind of difficult to do that with OpenBazaar because we built it to be fully distributed. There's no central servers anywhere that are collecting this kind of information, but we have some knowledge of how it's been going. There's been several 100,000 downloads of the installers for version 1 and 2 together. And since November, so since the 2.0 launched, we've seen just over 45,000 unique nodes, different people joining the network in the last 6 months or so. And right now, if you include Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash, Zcash, and all the adult listings, there's around 10,000 listings. About 85% of those are physical listings. Most of the goods on the network are actual physical things that are shipped. About 10% are digital, and under 5% are services. And about 5 to 10% of those are not safe for work, are adult services. So before I finish, I want to quickly talk through our roadmap about where we're headed with OpenBazaar. We just released a roadmap for 2018 a couple weeks ago, put a video out. We've been talking through it a lot recently. So I highly encourage you to go to openbazaar.org, look at our blog, and find the roadmap post to get more details, because I'm gonna go through this very quickly. The biggest thing that we're focusing on is getting OpenBazaar onto new platforms. So it's always been a desktop-only experience, and that was because of the limitations of the technology primarily. But we think now we're able to get it onto both mobile devices and the web. So mobile devices we've been working on for a while. It's going to be an OB1 service. It's going to be an OB1 app. That's going to be coming out later this year, and both on Android and iOS. And then web is going to be a phased approach, because getting it onto the web for you to be able to browse and look at things on the network is not that difficult. And that's kind of what we're working on right now, and we think will be coming out pretty soon. But you won't be able to engage. It's like a read-only data, right? You're not going to be able to buy or sell things just through a browser. That's the next phase. That's the next phase, is to have the buy-only component. It'll just be for buyers. And then the last phase is a full OpenBazaar node in the browser. And that one's more difficult and is going to take a while. But the browse only will be here soon, and then the buy only is a little bit further down the road. We want to make sure supporting developers is something that we maintain and improve our focus on. Our documentation hasn't been that great. It is open source, but it's difficult to maintain good documentation. And we want to make sure we're offering things like bounties and whatnot. And that's something we're going to be focusing on more in the near future. There's a OpenBazaar token that we've been talking about for a while, and it's still it is still a bit nebulous. We're still trying to figure out exactly how to make this work correctly. So we don't have a lot of details on that yet. If you want to learn more about the token, visit openbazaar.org/token. It gives you more information about it, and it lets you sign up for updates in order to hear more about it once we have the information. And then there's a bunch of new features that we're putting into the platform in the coming months. One is cryptocurrency listings. So you'll be able to buy and sell cryptocurrency directly with someone. No fees, no need to sign up for accounts. It's kind of like over-the-counter trade, but through the OpenBazaar platform. You'll be able to make requests. So right now, sellers put out whatever they have, whatever goods or services. But soon, buyers will be able to put out requests and say, here's what I'm looking for. And then sellers can come in and fulfill them, which makes it hopefully a much bigger marketplace. We have automated digital downloads. That means when you're selling digital content, as soon as the money comes in, the file goes out, which will be very convenient. We have a feature called Channels, which allows for improved content discovery. People will be able to curate their own group of listings based on whatever criteria they want, and then share that group with other people who can then sort of browse through. Instead of being forced to use these search providers just for searching, you'll be able to have these sort of channels of curated content that you'll be able to look through. So those are the primary features we're looking at introducing. And the last thing on the roadmap is the creation of a foundation. So OpenBazaar has always been open source. It's always going to be open source. But OB1, the company, has primarily been the one who's been pushing development. And we want to make sure that there's always going to be an organization out there that has just the sort of protocol network software's best interest in mind. And we think a nonprofit is the best way to do that. So we'll be creating this foundation and then transitioning maintenance of the protocol away from OB1 and toward the foundation over time. And we hope that that's going to let us better engage with the community too, offering bounties, that sort of thing. So that is the OpenBazaar roadmap. If you'd like more information generally about OpenBazaar, visit openbazaar.org. There's a link there to our Slack group. That's where a lot of this community interaction happens. And I highly encourage anyone who's interested to go join the Slack. You do have to request to join. It takes us a little while to accept the invitations, but we will definitely let you in. There's also a subreddit. It's just /r/OpenBazaar. If you want to contact me personally and talk more about Bitcoin or OpenBazaar, you can find me on Twitter, but I actually prefer Keybase. Keybase is a great service, and I definitely recommend people check me out there. And now that's my presentation. I'm happy to answer questions from anyone. Thank you.
Samuel, thanks again for your talk. So does anyone here in the meetup directly have some questions? There are some online.
I have some questions. Integrated and my question is, what is the rules for the cryptocurrency, or why we choose the different cryptocurrencies?
Okay, Sam, so the question was that you mentioned that you integrate different currencies, right, like Bitcoin Cash or Zcash, and what are your criteria for adding other cryptocurrencies?
Yeah, it's a good question. So we have a specific criteria laid out in our documentation. And it's things like, well, I don't remember offhand, to be honest. You'd have to go look through the documentation. But generally speaking, the reason we selected what we selected initially is how close it is to Bitcoin to begin with is a big part of it. The reason why is something like, let's say, Ethereum is substantially different enough from Bitcoin that integrating it into what we already have, which was built just for Bitcoin originally, can be quite difficult and time consuming. So something that's architecturally similar to Bitcoin, like Bitcoin Cash and Zcash, definitely makes that easiest. We also strongly prefer an SPV wallet. That is how by default it runs right now, is you run your own SPV wallet. We kind of broke that rule for Zcash, which right now requires a full node. And honestly, we haven't seen a lot of adoption because of that restriction. So we're going to be pretty hardline on SPV wallets moving forward, I think. But yeah, it's mostly the criteria of how difficult is it going to be to integrate? How difficult is it going to be to maintain? Is there going to be an SPV wallet? And generally speaking, is there demand? I mean, we get emails every day from all these different small cap coins saying, please integrate us into your platform. And, you know, it's probably not worth our time and the maintenance time in the future, because you have 50 people who want to spend this currency, right? So those are all different reasons, different criteria.
I have a question. How does OpenBazaar manage jurisdiction of shipping and product imports? For example, certain products you are not allowed to import into Europe from America, or you're allowed to import it. If you take Amazon, for example, you buy certain products, it can be delivered in Austria, but it cannot be delivered in Slovakia. Mm-hmm. How does OpenBazaar actually manage these jurisdictions?
I will add to this question what is mentioned about branded products like Adidas and brands like that, and between the fakes. What's the difference?
Yeah, okay, so the question was about different jurisdictions and restrictions, especially like some of the content you cannot ship from one country to the different, and each country have different restrictions. So how does OpenBazaar deal with that? And
yeah, so if you view OpenBazaar as a protocol that allows two people to connect directly to each other and engage in trade, and then a software that implements it, because that's what it is, then it's not on the people creating the sort of reference client software to figure out how all these different jurisdictions interact and then try to enforce like rules on top of that. So the answer basically is everyone engaging in trade themselves has to figure out those rules when they engage in trade and make sure they're following them. It's not enforced at the platform level, because that would be, I mean, if you have the resources of Amazon, you know, maybe you're able to figure that sort of thing out, but we aren't. So it's up to each individual to figure that out for themselves.
And real products.
Yeah. And the second follow-up question: how do you deal with the brand products and fake products? Is it the same thing? It's up to the size.
Yeah. So there's a reputation system, a very simple one right now in the platform, which allows for people to leave reviews on products, similar to other e-commerce platforms. So, you know, hopefully, if someone does a counterfeit or a fake or whatnot, then that will be revealed by enough people leaving poor reviews. Ultimately, there's, you know, again, because this is permissionless, the developers, no one can come in and kick off a scammer off the platform. And we have seen scams on the platform. People will, you know, try to get people to use a direct payment for large purchases instead of using a moderator, or they'll fake a moderator that is untrustworthy. Like they'll collude with a moderator because it uses 2 of 3 multisig. So if you get the moderator and the vendor, say, together, they can just steal the buyer's funds altogether. The way we avoid this is, first of all, like I said, you have reviews and reputation. But second of all, we created this list of trustworthy moderators, right? OB1 offers that as a service, but anyone else can offer a verified moderator service as well. And we basically say, these are people that have given us their identity, that, you know, they've been community members for a long time, and we trust them. So if someone engages in trade with a verified moderator, it's very unlikely that they'll be scammed. And if they are scammed, then OB1 knows their identity and they can try to have legal recourse to address it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. Another question, which was actually similar to one posted on the internet, is do you plan to integrate Lightning Network? And also, how did the high on fees affect you? And if it's sustainable for you for a business model to have high fees?
Yeah, so a high fee one I'll take first. It did significantly impact OpenBazaar. As I mentioned, I have a video where we talked about integrating new coins. I think it's called Why OpenBazaar is Integrating New Cryptocurrencies. And I actually talked through specifically how high fees got, because we were reliant completely on Bitcoin at the time, and how damaging that was. It is pretty significant. So there are a few different options. You know, one is integrating new cryptocurrencies altogether, and that's one of the paths that we took. The other is, you know, second layer, like Lightning Network. So there is some uncertainty around Lightning Network in terms of integration with OpenBazaar, because the way Lightning Network works right now is it's an always on network. In order for you to engage in the network, you have to be connected all the time. And in order for you to receive payments, you have to be online. That's just a hard requirement. And the way OpenBazaar works is we moved away from that with version 2. Version 1 wasn't always online network, but people didn't like that experience. So we moved to being built on IPFS, and people can go on and off the network now. And you're able to still receive, if you're a vendor, you're still able to receive people's orders when you're offline and receive payment offline too. So it's not clear exactly how that works with Lightning Network right now. However, we are looking into it. One of our co-founders of OB1, Washington Sanchez, believes he has a plan that will allow us to integrate Lightning Network. I honestly do not know the details of that yet. It's not something that will happen overnight, but it's certainly something that we're looking at. And so the second layer approach on Bitcoin is something we're looking at. And the broader approach of using other cryptocurrencies is something we're continuing as well.
they are going to refund because it is product you are not satisfied. So when the second
Yeah, how does the returning of the products works if you are not satisfied, and also returning of the money once the product was delivered?
Right. So we use cryptocurrencies exclusively, as I mentioned. And of course, cryptocurrencies are not reversible. Payments are not reversible. So there are two types of payments that you can make in OpenBazaar. One is a direct payment. And as the name implies, you send money directly from the buyer to the seller. If you do that and you're unsatisfied with the product, or it's not delivered or whatever, then you basically are just asking the vendor to give you a refund. And of course, and it's easy to do that in the software. You just click refund or whatnot. But you're completely dependent on them to do that. So that's why if you don't trust the vendor, or if it's a large purchase, the second way to send funds is the way you should go, which is what's called a moderated payment. And moderated payments make use of multi-sig. And if you're not familiar with multi-sig, it basically just means that instead of one person having control over that cryptocurrency, you have multiple people have control over it, and they must agree before the funds go anywhere. So for moderated payments, we use a 2 of 3 multi-sig account. So the 3 key holders are the vendor, the buyer, and a third party called a moderator. You agree to who the moderator is before you engage in the trade. And then if you're unsatisfied, so if you try to get scammed or if they won't give you a refund or whatever, you then open a dispute with the moderator, give them your evidence about how you've been wronged, and then the moderator will make a decision whether to give a refund to the buyer, whether to release the funds to the vendor, or to split. They can split any way they want. So that's basically the protection system you have in OpenBazaar if you get bad goods or to prevent scamming.
And does the moderator receive the fees, or how the moderator fees work?
Yeah, good question. Moderators are incentivized to offer their service because they get a cut of the dispute. So actually, if a dispute's opened, and I'm sorry, let me back up. If a dispute is never opened, the moderator actually isn't even aware that they've been selected as a moderator on the trade. For privacy reasons, we don't want that to even be known. So the only time a moderator is pulled in is if a dispute's opened. And at that point, as soon as they settle the dispute, they get a percentage cut. They get a percentage cut of the overall transaction. So moderators can actually choose that cut too. It's not set. So moderators compete with each other on an open marketplace based on the fee that they charge. And it ranges anywhere from, some people actually charge no fee. I'm not sure why they offer it for free, but they do. I've seen moderator fees as high as maybe 20%. Those people, like one of them is actually a lawyer who gives you his real world identity. So you have a lot more certainty about him. Most of them charge, say, 3 to 5%, something like that. Yeah.
I guess on the OpenBazaar. Now the question was how you can sign as a moderator. We already have some volunteers. I guess they go to the OpenBazaar.
So that's actually a good question. Moderators, because this is a permissionless, a permissionless system, anyone can be a moderator. But if you want to be a verified moderator, which if you're going to be a moderator, I do recommend, because it gives people a lot more confidence in your services, then the best way is to actually contact me, because OB1 offers a verified moderator service. And we have a list of things that we require you to do. Basically, it means sharing your identity, improving it, sharing a list of long-lived internet accounts that we can sort of tie to you provably, and then using a service called Keybase that I talked about earlier in order to sign a message showing that you have ownership over the node that you're claiming you have ownership over. That sounds more complicated than it is. We have a step-by-step blog post that lays it out. But yeah, I mean, just talk to me and I'd be happy to sign you up.
Yeah, also like two more questions. So do you have verified stores? Does OpenBazaar support them?
Verified stores, I think you said, and the answer is no. We don't. We had something similar in the first version, which was actually called handles, and that lets you. So a store name is actually just a hash. It's not human readable. It's not very friendly, user friendly. And in the first version, we let people map that hash to a human readable name using the service Blockstack. So that was kind of a verification method because Blockstack could tie into other platforms. We're looking into, that's actually one thing I skipped over on the roadmap, but we're looking into how to implement something similar in the second version. But as of right now, no, that doesn't exist.
And if you don't mind, I will ask my question as last. So there was a lot of talk on cryptocurrencies that how high fees affect possibility of use or selling and buying stuff. But what about the volatility of the cryptocurrencies? Because still, like many people still use their native currencies like euro and dollar. So the high volatility still affects, and many people don't simply buy anything because why would I buy something if I expect for my cryptocurrencies to go up?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's definitely a problem because it is rational to some extent to just want to hold on if you expect the value to go up, or it's also rational for buyers or sellers to like cancel orders if the value of the crypto had changed, you know, from when they placed it to when it was fulfilled, right? So like the volatility definitely does have disadvantages. I would say, though, that all the advantages I talked about earlier of decentralized money, of actually being able to spend decentralized money, are really only achievable through using cryptocurrency. So if you want all those properties I talked about, you're still sort of forced to use cryptocurrency. Now, I can't answer the question of how harmful it is to like generally adoption of these platforms because I don't have a counterexample. I don't know. I do know during last fall after we launched 2.0, fees were like originally like $3 to $5, which was bad. But we still saw people using it, especially for higher value transactions. When fees went up to $20 or even temporarily $50, I mean, it seemed like at least temporarily no one was going to be using the platform, right? Like, so it's pretty obvious at that point when you get fees that high, it's going to have a huge impact. How many of those people didn't want to spend it because they just wanted the value to increase and you know they were waiting it out? I can't give you an answer. I don't have any, you know, stats to back it up. I suspect it's a decent amount of people. That's another reason why we feel like integrating cryptocurrencies, like more broadly speaking, is important because there might be other currencies that either don't have as much volatility or even maybe perhaps a stable coin down the road that gets rid of that altogether. Or I'm actually not that hot on stable coins, but you know, maybe they could work in this case. I don't know. But yeah, I see it as a problem. But like, if you believe in the original vision of cryptocurrencies as being sort of peer-to-peer cash and not only as a store of value, then this platform still needs to exist, whether or not a lot of people still are just viewing cryptocurrencies as primarily a store of value. Like I think it needs to be both, and we are facilitating the medium exchange side and maybe fighting the store of value side a little bit, but it still needs to exist for the medium exchange. So that's why we're doing what we're doing.
Yeah. Okay, Sam, thanks. So this was the last question. So thanks once again for talking to us. We will post all of the links you mentioned into the YouTube, under the YouTube video, and also on the events and Facebook event and meetup event. So we will be able to check the links and obviously check the OpenBazaar. Once again, thanks,
All right.
Sam.
Yeah, well, thank you all again. I appreciate the invite, and I hope you all do check OpenBazaar out. Y'all have a good day.